Council will come to order. Councilors, our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand and join with us in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Well, thank you, Council, and others for joining us at tonight's meeting. Jennifer, I think before we go too far, I'm going to let you introduce our special guest tonight, and then we'll get on with citizen comments, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. I'm going to let Annabelle introduce herself.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Annabelle Bodunrin. I am a second year at the University of Idaho College of Law, and she's my mentor. So she very graciously invited me here to observe how her day in life is. And so I really wanted to see what one of the council meetings was like. So thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Well, welcome. And for the record, Elaine and others, we really work hard to try to find municipal attorneys, and they're very hard to get. And so we have a friend with us here tonight. So maybe someday you'll find yourself in this position. I'm sure Jennifer will tell you it's a very rewarding job. It's a very diverse job sometimes. Yeah, it can be fun and other things. But anyway, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
Our next order of business is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for individuals wishing to comment on agenda items or other matters they wish to bring to the council's attention, excluding those scheduled for a public hearing. As there may not be another opportunity to comment once an agenda item is addressed, individuals are encouraged to speak at this time. Individuals are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor. In consideration of others wishing to speak, commentary is limited to 3 minutes. Also, your city council pledges to practice and promote civility within the governing body, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the city. So with that, I will open it up for citizen comments. If you have citizen comments tonight, there's a microphone in the middle of the floor. We just need your name and city of residence. We don't need your physical address. And please remember to speak up so those listening at home can hear what you have to say. Councilor, have we heard? Tanya, did you hear?
What was that?
Have we heard from our counselor?
Counselor Maury? Yes, he has an excused.
Excused absence tonight? Okay, so Counselor Maury has an excused absence tonight. Okay, thank you. With that, if there are any citizen comments, welcome. Okay, we'll move past that and move right on to presentations. Roman numeral 4, item A, Valley Vision Quarterly Progress Report, receiving a quarterly progress report on the accomplishments and activities of Valley Vision from President CEO Jerry Chavez. Jerry, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Johnson and city council members. My name is Jerry. Last name is Chavez. I am the president and CEO for Valley Vision. And can you hear me? Perfect.
You can always speak a little bit louder.
Speak a little bit louder. I don't know which mic, where's the mic at? So
You're good, right there.
Right here? Very good. So, as I said before, it's always a pleasure to be in front of the city council to talk about Valley Vision, our accomplishments. But before I go into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I want to go ahead and acknowledge 2 board members that I have in the audience today that are here to support and maybe answer any questions that I can't field from the council. One of those being our old historian, not old, but our historian, Butch Alford with the Tribune, and Mike Tatko with the Vista. So,
Welcome, Butch and Mike. Thank you.
I also want to recognize that we've had a change of, as it reflects to changes within council members every year, every couple of years. We do have representation from the city sitting on our board. And this year, John Spickelmeyer has come on to serve as your representative to our board, and we appreciate that. So I'll begin by giving you an update. And the numbers always speak for themselves, and everybody's always wondering, what have we done lately? And that's whether we're here in Lewiston or my third year career in economic development. But I go to the numbers, I rely on data quite a bit. This kind of gives you a snapshot of why industry is important to the valley. And what you see here are a bunch of bubbles, right? But more importantly, you see earnings for manufacturing, government, and healthcare, and below that in the blue bubbles, you'll see employment, FTEs within those particular sectors. Look at the earnings, and that is in thousands of dollars, so that's $1.04 billion of payroll that's coming into this economy, and with 5,300 employees. Government is $430 million. Employment for that is about 5.5K. And these are numbers that come from our U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reporting of 2023, 2024. And Andrea in our office updates those probably on a quarterly basis, if you will. But if you use a rule of thumb, which we do, for every dollar of industry that goes into the economy, there's another 50 cents that goes to support that dollar in services, whether that be groceries, selling vehicles, hotels, restaurants, and that sort of stuff. So you add that to that number, and you can see that's a big number. It's $1.5 billion that industry represents into this economy. Having said that, go ahead and stop me at any time. I'm going to roll through this fairly quickly because there's a lot of information. I'm going to hand you some information so you can review a little bit later on by yourselves. But when we look at our contract between Valley Vision and the city, we do not report nor do we commit to landing or to making announcements or helping companies come to the valley. That's a windfall, if you will, of all the other work that goes into business attraction. So by the numbers, Cascade Plastic just announced last July, $10 million CapEx building at about 36,000 square feet. It's actually under construction in North Lewiston. They'll create about 30 FTEs and a payroll of about $2.8 million. Once again, you do the rule of thumb, 50 cents per dollar that goes, you do the math behind that, that equates to about $4.2 million. We all know that in 2023, Northwest Forest Line announced, and the numbers are respectfully in front of you. But I call your attention to, in about 3 years, there's $8.7 million of new money coming into this economy. We rely heavily on trying to prospect. We go out in the marketplace to try to find Cascade Plastics, to try to find Northwest Forest Line. You can see where we go on an annualized basis. You can see the numbers or the meetings that we've had. And you can see that when we conduct a prospecting mission, we're not doing that vis-a-vis a phone, vis-a-vis teleconference. We actually go to a location, whether that is in Oxnard, California, and meet with a company on their home turf, share some information on relatively what is the cost of doing business, and that's what we actually are selling at the end of the day. We're trying to call their attention. Cost of doing business in the valley is relatively much lower in the markets that we're trying to prospect. So I won't spend too much more time other than to say we'll be in Canada, California, Washington, Oregon here very shortly. There's a little bit of a lull over the holidays. As you can imagine, nobody wants to entertain anybody but their friends and their colleagues over Christmas and New Year celebration. They don't want to entertain somebody in the economic development field. But the other thing I will share with you is the impact that tariffs has had in the marketplace. You can see the numbers. It's a little bit tougher today to get out and go out and try to organize that particular meeting. We don't do that. We hire a consultant to that particular piece of work for us. But you can see our projects. We're in the midst of trying to negotiate 3 deals. You see my hot list reference. We scrub out the project name. You can see the location. You can see it per se on the right-hand side, California 3. That lead came from our third trip to to Canada. So site tours that are being proposed are right below that. I'll go in more depth if you have some questions regarding that, but I want to move into what we call BEAR. Another part of the business that Valley Vision does, BEAR programming.
Give them the city clerk, please, and she'll hand them out. Jerry, thank you.
BEAR report, it's a little bit more. But I wanted you to have that so you can get a little bit more information relative to what our industry partners are saying in the marketplace. So our BEAR is actually a process where we interview our industry partners, go on site, conduct an interview with 77 questions to try to find information. What is it like to do business in the Valley, so to speak? Of those, we see achievements, we see expansion plans, workforce ability and quality. I'm going over the left-hand side, key findings, training development, community strengths, weaknesses, and barriers to growth. Conversely, we come up with recommendations based upon this information. And within the recommendations, address workforce challenges, enhance technology infrastructure, vis-a-vis broadband expansion, streamline the regulatory process, support infrastructure development. Once again, infrastructure is very important. Extending water, sewer, stormwater is very important for development going forward. I want to give the city at least acknowledge that in the past, we've tried to do that in the downtown area. That's very important to continue to try and do that. Hopefully, we will be successful at some point going forward. Continue to foster community involvement and collaboration. And we took this one step further. We actually came up with City of Lewiston recommendations. You've heard me talk about this before. I won't go through all of them other than to say some of our developers in the Valley may have been critical on the development process. Valley Vision went in to interview, try to find out what was actually the crux of some of these complaints. And we came up with a list of recommendations. Pass those recommendations on to community development and to the mayor. And I can tell you that as a result of those recommendations, we've seen some improvement. We've actually seen a developer satisfaction survey come out of that. And I've been associated with 2 projects where we've seen very positive results as a matter of working together and try to be very business friendly to our business community. So with that being said, I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jerry. Councilors, questions? Councilor Wright?
Thank you. So this is probably more on the bear side.
Yes, sir.
SEL is building a facility in Moscow.
Yep.
Have you looked into that at all, or is that something Valley Vision does? Kind of a after-action report of why they picked Moscow, not Lewiston type?
You know, there's a whole reason why a company will pick location versus another location. Our office was not engaged. We tried to go out and understand what it is where our companies are moving in the market and when they're moving. We had some intelligence that they're moving, but not able to have that door open to engage in those conversations.
Gotcha.
But I can tell you that because of our BEAR program, we understood that CCI Spear was entertaining an expansion. As you can see, a result of that was the Cascade Plastics relocate or expansion from other states.
Councilor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So Jerry, back on your slide for the business attraction plan, you mentioned that Valley Vision hires a consultant to do that. Can you explain that process of what the consultant does?
Yeah, sure. So we hire a consultant that does prospecting activities for us. In a nutshell, what they are responsible for is setting up meetings on one-on-one basis, based upon the type of companies we're looking for, the size of the companies we're looking for, and some of those parameters. We call these filters in this industry. So we put out those filters to our consultant, and they try to find companies in our particular markets that we're trying to prospect in. And once again, that's California, the western side of Oregon, western side of Seattle, Washington, Canada, Arizona, and then even in Mexico. So that's where they're looking for these companies. They understand which companies are expanding through their intelligence, and it's more of a matchmaking process, if you will, council member. So when we go to a Southern California trip, they will organize upwards of about 10 meetings. So when I'm going down there, I'm trying to leverage and cover as much ground as possible, given given the distances and whatnot, that they can have me all over the southern part of California trying to meet with these companies. But basically, they are my matchmaking consultant. They have a lot of infrastructure underneath them. We can't replicate that infrastructure at Valley Vision. Does that make sense?
Counselor.
So Jerry, then with that is, are these consultants, are they a big part of your Valley Vision's budget or a big impact to you?
Per contract, it's about $40,000. And $40,000 will result in about 35 meetings. Upwards of 35, depending on how we can negotiate, that'll be as low as 28 meetings. So for any given contract, we're out in the marketplace trying to meet with about 28 companies. Of that, we should produce somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5 site tours, or 5% of those should produce 5% of that 30, 35, 28, whatever number it shakes out to be. That should come back to us in terms of a site tour. That would be a company coming from Oxnard, California to the Valley to try to understand specifically what are those advantages. You can see them on paper, you can hear me talk about them, but it's more important when they come boots on the ground to visit with the Vista, to understand what the infrastructure is like and what the cost of that utility particularly is. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Counselor Forsman.
So obviously on the slides, I saw that you identified tariffs. I'm sure that's causing companies to think ahead. I'm wondering, with the recent Supreme Court decision last week that President Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to impose those duties under national security law, have you heard, or do you feel like that's going to affect anything?
Councilmember Forsman, it's hard to predict what that looks like. If you can remember in the summer with the tariff conversation, it was across the board. And the fallout and the conversation really didn't grab until a little bit later on. So we're hopeful that it will free itself up. We're hopeful that some of those companies that push back a little bit in terms of their plans because of tariffs are going to step forward.
Counselor Spicklemeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So kind of off of this list, I know Jerry, but at the last board meeting, we talked about some of the impacts to this in industrial building sites in Lewiston. Now, and I know that's an issue. Is it due to zoning or just due to land?
It's a little bit of combination of both, if you will. So we don't have any industrial buildings in our region that is a particular focus for the companies that we're looking at. And that's typically about 50,000 square feet, maybe 50,000 square feet, 75,000 square feet or above. We do have a lot of big empty storefronts, if you will, but there's a big difference between a once upon a time Kmart location versus what a industrial user may use. That building was built for and to support retail or commercial, if you will. industry requires a lot bigger infrastructure, thicker floors, beefier switch gears for their electric, higher ceilings so they can store stuff like that. So with regards to that, we're moving forward with a task force, property task force, to investigate what are the next steps. We've identified inventory. Now we're going to look at what size of inventory is missing in the marketplace, and then even get to a point where we can fast track buildings of 40,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet, 75,000 square feet. That way we can go in and shorten that time to development when we're talking to these particular clients. What I didn't also mention was those other things that Valley Vision is involved in. As a result of that, we stood up a 50C3 not-for-profit to be the development arm for Valley Vision. So Valley Vision, or the C6 as we refer to it in our office, is sales and marketing. And then the C3, which will actually be the development arm of Valley Vision. You'll see several projects that are coming in the not too distant future that will make it very apparent of why we're doing, or why we've set up in that particular lane with regards to staying at that C3. Quick question, so thank you.
Jerry, I don't see any further questions. Thank you for being here with us tonight, and Butch and Mike for joining us also. Thank you for supporting City Council. Clerk Rocky will distribute the report to the council here in a bit. Yeah. Council, next we'll move to Roman number 5, public hearings and related action items. Item A, continuation of public hearing on ordinance 4956, accepting public comments on ordinance 4956 relating to the amendment of the city's franchise agreement with Sanitary Disposal Incorporated, doing business as Sunshine Disposal and Recycling. This is an action item, and before we get into that, I will open the public hearing. We'll have a staff presentation from our Public Works Director, Dustin Johnson. Then a presentation from Sunshine Disposal and Recycling, and then we'll accept any testimony from the public. No additional evidence or testimony may be received once the public hearing is closed. So this is, and that will be the time to ask any questions you might have, council. So I would encourage you to do that. Then I will close the public hearing. So with that, council, I will open the public hearing, 6:23, and turn it over to our Public Works Director, Dustin Johnson. Welcome, Director.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. This is just for reference, if we need it tonight, the presentation I provided the first time we opened up this public hearing. So I have no real additional information tonight, other than there was one, this is just housekeeping. If you remember during the discussion, there was an eagle eye reviewer who caught that the PPI index number that was referenced in the ordinance did not match the exhibit. We've gotten to the bottom of that, and the one that's in the ordinance is correct. The one that's in the exhibit is short of number 2 at the end. So we will make sure that those two figures match before it's adopted. And so with that, I don't, like I said, I don't have additional information. Before you, within your packet was everything that you considered previously, and then there was a couple pages that Sunshine Disposal provided for additional context to answer some of the questions that they received from council last time we discussed this. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, who will kind of walk you through a little bit more in specifics, and then we'll all be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Brian, welcome. If you'd please introduce yourself for the record. Remember to speak up loudly and clearly. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Brian Coddington. I'm with Sunshine Disposal and Recycling. I'll also be brief tonight. I'm going to just go over the highlights in the letter that we submitted in response to the questions that you had the last time we were before you a couple of weeks ago. We tried to be as responsive as possible and provide a broader context to the conversation that we had last time, beginning with kind of what brought us to this point. So there was a question last time regarding the totality of the question of the ask that we have before you tonight. That came out of a mutual discussion and desire out of the council and staff to be able to identify other additional minor changes that could be addressed as part of the opening up of the franchise agreement at this point in time. So that's why you see some additional items beyond the data that we provided tonight. The data points, I think, are the pieces of information we really want to dive into. Those were the central point of question last time as we talked about this. So we tried to provide you with a little bit of industry-wide impact, a little bit of our local experience, and then some context within the community. So flipping to the figures, the three different graphs. The first graph is a discussion about the difference in the chain CPI, so industry. So currently we have a chain CPI indice that we use to calculate rate adjustments on an annual basis. We are requesting that we move to a PPI, solid waste PPI indice. This represents the difference between the two over the last several years. So we began with FY 2020 because we thought relevant to the conversation. This is a request for the force majeure section of the contract related to impact to the pandemic. So going back to information pre-pandemic and then speaking moving forward to the current situation would be most relevant and helpful to the conversation. So as you can see, our costs have gone up somewhere in about approaching 25%. Our ask here and the data that we put before you demonstrates that we're asking for something less than our actual cost, and that's intentional on our part and after discussion with staff to be able to recognize and acknowledge the impact that the pandemic had on everyone in the community, not just us. So we're asking for consideration related to the industry. Secondarily, our operating costs. The question was specifically to demonstrate the impact on our operating costs. And so I think the mayor had made the suggestion about looking at carts. We tried to provide you with a broad range of most impactful items in operating costs to give you an idea of what we were looking at. So residential trucks we talked about last time, 3-yard dumpster as an example, tires, medical costs, driver costs, or employee costs, and then the carts, and then to give you an average of those different items. Lastly, we try to put that into context of the conversations we've had with other communities. This has been going on in both North Idaho and Eastern Washington, but for comparison purposes, we demonstrated, or we put for you tonight the comparison to North Idaho communities. So both Latah County and Nez Perce County, and what the experience has been in those two areas to give you a frame of reference, and you'll see that the request that we're making of the council tonight is right in line with those other communities and the cost impacts that we've experienced and shared with those communities. So with that, I will leave it there, and we'll be prepared to answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Thank you, Brian. Council, questions for Mr. Coddington? Okay.
I'll ask you a question.
Okay. I thought it was him.
We still need to hear from the public if we have any, but Councilor Klein.
I was just wondering, why can't people opt out of a certain service like waste or yard waste or recycling?
I believe those are decisions that are made by policy at the council level. In those, so we enact, or we provide the service based upon the council's requested service level. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe,
Introduce yourself, please,
sorry,
sir.
Dustin Johnson, Public Works. I was not written, I think that's written into the franchise contract, that's bundled together. That was written before I got here, so I can look into that, but I'm not sure. I'm assuming it was part of the franchise contract when it was drafted 6 years ago.
I think, just from a historical perspective too, Director, I think it'd be very difficult to bid these contracts if you didn't know how many customers you're going to have. It would be very difficult for the contract companies to give you a fair price because you just don't know where your revenue is going to be.
Yeah, we talked to the experts about sanitation and collection and disposal and talk about flow control, and it's exactly that. When you're bidding out a job, you need a a certain volume to be guaranteed. It's obviously that can be, challenging when you're talking about recycling, yard waste, and garbage collection. So I'm not going to say what was the conversation 6 years ago because I wasn't in the room, but that's generally how a lot of these contracts go when you're negotiating with collection or even disposal.
Counselor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So Brian, I'm just curious, looking through these things in the last meeting, the discussions, it sounded to me like when you guys first identified that you were falling behind on your profits or whatever, however way you want to put it, was it because you found this PPI, this index that was so far off from the chain's PPI, or because it's almost exact? The change you're wanting, the 18.5%, and I think if you did the comparison, it ended up being 19.5 or something.
Yeah, so a couple of factors here at play. The first thing we look at is our operating costs. So that's where the 25% number comes in. So that's where we're falling behind in terms of operating costs. As we've looked at what impacts those operating costs and how we make sure the contract continues to perform at a service level that's acceptable to the council and the community, we do look at other experiences that we have. And the more common indice that is being used is the solid waste industry indice. That's because it most accurately represents changes to the industry. So for example, the change CPI may or may not have look at trucks the same way, for it as an example, as the solid waste industry PPI does. And as you look across the expenses that we've outlined here, trucks are obviously a large expense in terms of cost of providing service to the community. So then as we look back, you'll recall that our initial request was for 18.5% plus the annual CPI adjustment for the year. In conversation with staff and going back and forth a little bit, we settled on the 18.5% inclusive of that 4.5% or so CPI adjustment. So rather than stack it on top, we included that as part of that request.
Counselor?
So I guess with that, I kind of have to trying to understand this, that from day one, when the contract was written, we're going to try to correct it to day one the way the contract that you agreed to, right? You agreed to the original contract using that index.
We did in the contract. So the contract dates back a number of years. We had a change in the structure of it. So it went from a contract structure to a franchise structure. At that point in time, there was not an opportunity to review the CPI, PPI discussion. So we were requesting based upon the current situation, because typically over the course of 30 years, CPI is fairly predictable. You have in contract language, and apologies for using contract and franchise agreement, you have an ability to come back for unforeseen circumstances, in this case, specifically disease, and that's what we're making the request.
I guess to me, there's a lot of people with contracts that would like to go back and correct what happened in the original contracts and get paid for the difference, that the error. I mean, I don't really understand us catching up with what you feel we owe you, and when there's a contract in place. I don't follow it myself, so.
Yeah, I think we're trying to adjust the language in the franchise agreement that it specifically outlines unforeseen circumstances, and those are very specific and highlighted in the contract, and one of them is disease, and something that you experience as a 1 in 100 year occurrence. I think the last pandemic was approximately 100 years ago. So the language, it can't be perfect every time, but it does try to anticipate some unforeseen circumstances. And in this case, we're talking about the pandemic that occurred.
I could completely agree with changing the index to what it should be. I could support that 100%.
Mayor.
Counselor Spickelmeyer, This is Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. I just wanted to note too, to your comment and question, and that in the franchise agreement on page 9, under section 4.4C, it does explicitly state any changes in franchisee's cost of operation, whether or not beyond franchisee's control, shall be the sole responsibility of franchisee and shall not be grounds to amend or terminate this agreement except as otherwise provided in this agreement. So again, I was not involved in the negotiations of this particular franchise agreement, so I don't know anything related to what was or was not negotiated. But I mean, there is an express provision that provides for the cost of operations in the agreement itself, where Sunshine is requesting an amendment under the force majeure clause. That provision does require them to show through documentation that that this is, an event of force majeure, and it's at the council's discretion to consider whether or not they have done so under that section, and that's section 10.11.
Jennifer? Thank you. Counselor Forsman?
I know at our last meeting, we kind of talked about looking at maybe like operating income or some kind of breakdown of actual dollars and how it's affected. And I know Jennifer Tangano mentioned that it could be does not have to be public record, because obviously you have concerns of competitors. I'm just curious why we didn't go that route, or what the concern was there.
But we try to be responsive to the request that we got, which was to compare carts, and like I said, we try to be broader beyond that. We do have some concerns with public records, and we do have some concerns with the ability to shield public record even through the process of sharing with the city attorney.
Counselor?
Nice question to Jennifer. So to that comment with concerns of it still being able to get some public request records or getting out, that information getting out, is that a possibility, going to that route where their information could get out, even sharing through the avenue that you mentioned? And forgive me for not remembering the.
So under the Idaho Public Records Act, information that's considered a trade secret is exempt from public disclosure. The main caveat the city has is that the person supplying the information has to identify that it is a trade secret and provide a justification for it. Traditionally, under Idaho case law, prices are not a trade secret, so the price of something itself, unless the price is a part of a formula, in which case there is the potential to not provide that. But without knowing the information that's to be supplied, we wouldn't know whether or not it would be a trade secret or not.
Follow up.
Counselor Forsman?
So for example, a operating income report or an EBITDA, would that be something that would not be under trade, or would be under trade secrets? Or is that still not enough information to?
That's still not enough information. There are cost reports that are provided for public consumption, like to investors or people that, there's public disclosures that companies make. So without knowing more specifics, I wouldn't be able to comment. Under the public records law, we're required to give every document an individual look. So we couldn't just provide a blanket exception just on the assumption that it's a trade secret. We'd have to be able to put our eyes on it and make a determination. And then if there were any questions, we would discuss with the provider of the information to have them provide a justification about whether they believe it is or is not a trade secret.
And now, once that information is provided and say it's determined that it's not a trade secret, is that information now public record? Because now, like, they kind of let the cat out of the bag. There's no putting it back because it was deemed public record.
Well, to the extent that they have that question initially, I would probably not have them submit anything and just have them present it for like an in-person review first. And then if it is, then they can provide it to the city as a part of an application or other materials. But I mean, just because they have the information doesn't mean that they have to send it to the city or that we accept it unless they're confident that it is going to be protected. But to my knowledge, there was no meaning of that nature.
So I guess,
Counselor?
so your concern was that, is that the concern, is that it's not going to be under those guidelines? I'm assuming maybe you guys looked into that or weighed
That is
those.
our concern, that it may not meet the guidelines for protection.
Thank you.
Brian, let's see if there are any citizen comments here. And you can
Thank
always
you.
come back up if you need to, and then we would give others a chance to respond. Are there any citizen comments tonight? Yeah, right here up front. Yeah, thank you, Dave. And then introduce yourself for the record, please. The floor is yours. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Brandon Johnson. Thank you, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the time and the work that's gone into reviewing this request. My comments are not about opposing a business, but about ensuring that we are making the most informed and financially
I
responsible
ask
decision.
you to speak up a little bit more. Yeah, we want to hear you.
Okay. About making the most informed and financially responsible decision for Lewiston ratepayers. My first question relates to the basis of the cost increase shown in Figure 2 of Sunshine's letter dated the 13th. I understand that not all materials may be included in the public packet, so I wanted to respectfully ask what was detailed cost data provided to council that substantiates the specific cost impacts shown in that figure. We were just talking about that. And to your point, Councilor Forsman, I do believe that cost of goods such as trucks and containers and things of that nature could be provided and would relate directly to the figure that they provided. If they did provide that context and you guys were able to review that, it would be helpful. And if not, I'm curious how those figures were derived. The data Sunshine references spans 2020 through 2025. The current contract was negotiated and executed in 2021 during a period when many pandemic-related cost increases were already occurring. My question is, when the 2021 agreement was finalized, were those 2020 and 2021 cost impacts in their figures there already factored into the base rates established at that time? In other words, were some of the increases being cited today already contemplated when the current rates were set? I just want to ensure we are not double counting cost impacts that may have already been incorporated into the original contract pricing. Additionally, in the letter provided on the 13th, Sunshine asked the city to consider industry-wide impacts rather than what they experienced individually. If regional or local impacts were less substantial than national industry averages, is it equitable for Lewiston ratepayers to absorb increases based on broader national trends rather than documented local experience? My next item is a concern related to the proposed shift from CPI to PPI. The PPI series identified is a national industry index for solid waste collection. It is not regional or Idaho specific. Is it appropriate to tie local rates to a national pricing index that reflects markets very different from Lewiston? The PPI is historically more volatile than the CPI. The CPI tends to provide stability and predictability for both the city and ratepayers. PPI appears to shift more inflation volatility to customers. Before making a structural change like this, I would encourage council to carefully consider whether a national index truly reflects our local or even regional cost environment. And the last item is a question relating to the amendment regarding to the local office requirement. The language states that a full-time supervisor will be available within the office with a local telephone number, and that the franchisee may request relocation outside city limits, but within the local area. How is local area defined? Would relocation outside of Nez Perce County qualify? If a ratepayer calls and reaches customer service located in another city, does that align with the original intent of maintaining a meaningful local presence? Because this is an exclusive franchise, effectively a monopoly within city limits, strong local accountability is typically part of that exchange. And that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Okay, not at this point. Thank you. Brian, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to anything that was shared with us by our citizen comments.
Yeah, there was a lot there. I'm sorry, I didn't didn't catch it all, I didn't get it right all down, but I think I'll work backwards first. The relation to the indices, I think we had this discussion during our last meeting related to the indices. If you recall the hot dog discussion, so the indices are a percentage, not a cost basis. So if the cost of a hot dog is $1 here and $2 in New York, and the cost goes up 2% as an industry average, that's 4 cents on the $2 in New York and 2 cents on the dollar in Lewiston. So that's how the indices actually work to address the differences. Speaking about the franchise agreement, it also predates me. I was not with Sunshine at that point in time, but as I understand the discussion in 2001, that change from contract to franchise occurred because of a change in case law that required the movement from a contract to a franchise agreement. At that point in time, this is what I was addressing earlier. The process took into account the differences between contract and franchise, but did not allow for an opportunity to go back and address the rates. And I can't speak to why that was the case, but that was, as I understand it, what happened during the 2021 conversation. So that's the reason why the rates weren't adjusted at that point in time, or there wasn't a request to make an adjustment at that point in time.
Thank you.
Other questions that you had?
Councilors? Councilor Forsman?
I did, one of the questions I think you mentioned, I'm trying to remember it, the cost of the trucks and having kind of more realistic numbers for that. I'm not sure if you put that in the report. I don't believe I saw those numbers.
We did not. We've discussed them before, but we didn't put them in the letter. So we've seen adjustments in the trucks from, going off of memory, which may be dangerous, in the 300s to mid to high 400s. And the most recent quote that we're getting is going to push it over $500,000 a truck. So that's kind of the scale that gets us to the percentage that you see here in the letter tonight.
Follow up, Mayor.
Councilor.
Maybe, I'm trying to determine how to word this. What way, or do we have verification on like how much the equipment has gone up, or what you guys are having to spend? Is that readily available for people to find, or is that something that you guys have a contract agreement maybe with those vendors, and how much that cost is going to be? And if we could see that, how would that work?
We can certainly discuss how to get you that information. So each individual service provider has relationships with vendors, and we generally have the same set of vendors that we can choose from in the case of a truck. And service providers tend to use one brand of truck versus another brand of truck to meet their specific needs. But typically, the price points are relatively similar, depending on the volume and the request that goes into those contracts to purchase a vehicle, warranties and things like that.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
So, Mayor, can I ask you a question?
You may.
I know in original meetings, you were looking at the difference in the index and stuff. In your review of it, did you come up with different differences in between the CDI and the PPI indexes? And
Well, I have gone over those indexes in pretty good detail, and I've pulled the indices from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I would probably make a couple adjustments to those contract prices based on those indices. However, I would probably ask to visit with Sunshine again to make sure that I'm understanding everything correctly, and they might want to ask us the same questions. But I think there's an opportunity to do that, to take a look at those indices and talk about them. But in terms of changing from a PPI, CPI combination, the CPI index is a chained index, and that's something that was generated probably 25-ish years, give or take. And if I were in the solid waste business, I would not want to use a chained index. I can tell you that. The index that Sunshine is looking at seems to be an industry-specific index. And what the Bureau of Labor Statistics will do is they will go out and they will put into that basket those types of activities and products that are related to that industry, to that business. And so that's supposed to be a more accurate measurement of changes in costs for those industries. So that's what they're asking us to look at. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And council will have a couple more shots at this to look at that, and I can get you some more information that talks about it. So I would agree with you, Counselor, that's probably a reasonable request to look at that index. But then we just have to agree on something between 0 and the 18.5% that they're asking for. Is that a reasonable answer? I wasn't trying to be political.
Nope, and answered it, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Wright?
Thank you. Question for Jennifer, if I can. When does this contract expire?
Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. Let me just, the current contract expires 2030, I believe. So the original term of the agreement was from December 1st through December 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, and then it automatically renewed for up to 8 additional one-year terms. And the agreement as it existed was not to extend beyond September 30th, 2030, unless otherwise agreed in writing by both the parties. And this particular amendment does not actually change the term of the agreement. It only changes the specific provisions identified in the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Forsman?
Can I think, for clarity's sake, tonight, we are not making a final decision on that one-time cost increase. As you said, we have more chances at this to get more information. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. We're in the public hearing to consider the request and to take all comments, for and against it. And then, once we close the public hearing, then we'll have 3 readings of this. Have more discussion.
One last follow-up then, I guess, to that.
Counselor?
If we can, so in the next meeting, or when we go through this again, to have those numbers, maybe what's your highest cost? I don't know if that's labor or equipment. So kind of just having a base of how much it costs to have a truck, how much is average wages for your workers. I don't know what other equipment you guys have, so whatever equipment that you would have that you could bring to the next meeting, so we kind of have some real numbers to look at, so that the citizens that are paying for this jump and increase really feel at ease with having this and understanding the need for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we can certainly look at providing that information to you. We're committed to being in conversation with the mayor regarding his questions as well. So we'll look at that in totality as a package and try to determine the best way to provide that information.
Thank you.
Council, further questions? I'll let you comment and then I'll give Brian a follow-up, please.
Brandon Johnson, Councilor Forsman, to your point again, I think when we're talking about the PPI, and for you too, Councilor Spickelmeyer, the percentage on the dollar is a fair assessment when you're looking at the percentage overall. But where it relates directly to the contract for the city of Lewiston is the direct impact to Sunshine. So, looking at that industry-wide, specifically on the PPI, which I agree, Mayor, that is more specific to solid waste, it's still being able to address whether or not it's something that's relevant to our local market. So, our local cost environment might be different than what you're seeing on the national index. And so, seeing some direct data to justify the increase, I think is really doing the due diligence. And then lastly, the city with the 1-year renewals that Jennifer was talking about has an opportunity to test the market. And even if they keep Sunshine as the current provider, you're not under an obligation to keep to just renew it and go on. You can put it out for competitive bid, depending on the timeline there, but it gives you an opportunity to validate the market, which in circumstances of a near 20% increase, I think are justifiable.
Thank you, Brandon. Brian, you have an opportunity to respond, and then I think we're finished.
Thank you. Brian Connie, Sunshine Disposal. Just one other thought on the national industry discussion. So some of the big ticket items, and Counselor, you asked about big ticket items. Obviously, trucks, big ticket item. Unfortunately, there's no regional market for trucks. There are national suppliers of trucks, and so they provide these trucks across the country, and you're beholden to the cost of those trucks across the country. Carts by volume, because the number of carts that go out to the curbside to the homeowners, also largely set by a national market, in a big ticket item for any service provider, whether it's Sunshine or another service provider. Medical costs, again, those are more national costs, and I think you as an employer can appreciate the cost of healthcare and the cost of trucks and those types of items that are you're competing on a national market in those items. So appreciate the opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Brian. Counselors, last chance for any questions. Counselor Spicklemeyer?
Thank you. So Brian, I was just looking at one of your, I think it's on page 2, you had some operating cost percentage increases. And I'm just curious on your driver, is that the increase in pay or what was that one?
That is increase in wage, yes.
Thank you.
Counselor Wright?
Thank you. Just one more for Jennifer. So on the contract again, it was signed 2021 and then went for 1 year with a automatic renewal if neither party wanted to make any changes. Was that, am I recalling correctly?
Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. So I'm not sure I understand the question, but yes, it is a 1-year agreement with 8 additional 1-year terms.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor?
What I was trying to understand was it was signed in 2021 and then it went to 2022. And that's when both parties would make adjustments if needed, or they just let it automatically renew. Am I thinking of that correctly? Like that's the process?
So the agreement includes adjustments in it and some that are automatic and then others that allow for an ask greater than the automatic, but I believe it's set a limit as far as a percentage increase. I have a marked up version, but I was not anticipating that question, so I'd have to look through all the various areas I have marked up. But as far as reconsidering the costs, probably in the nature that you're thinking, that Brandon had talked about testing the market. I don't believe that kind of scenario was contemplated in here, but it does, I mean, there are provisions in the agreement related to if the parties needed to terminate. And again, as Brandon suggested, there's nothing that would stop the city from considering alternatives, as long as the provisions in the contract itself are not breached and that the appropriate notices and termination provisions are followed.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. Point of clarification, so this is an ordinance that is in front of you, so there's 3 separate readings, and so tonight you were only considering reading number 1. We need to pass all 3 readings, and so in order for this to move forward, you would pass reading number 1, not to say that we couldn't amend it at reading number 2 or reading number 3. So once you close the public hearing, you will be voting on reading number 1. In order to proceed along and negotiate, we would need to get to reading number 2. So I just wanted to make that clear for the public and council and everybody watching at home that this is 3 separate readings and this is only the first reading.
Contractor Council's last opportunity for questions. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. 7 o'clock. Council, we next move to item B, first reading of ordinance 4956, considering amending the franchise agreement for collection, hauling, and tipping of residential and commercial solid waste, yard waste, and recyclable materials with Sanitary Disposal, Inc., doing business as Sunshine Disposal and Recycling, approved through Lewiston City Ordinance Number 4823 on November 1st, 2021, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign said agreement to the franchise agreement. An action item. If you don't need to hear from our Public Works Director further on this, I would entertain a motion. Councilor Spickmeyer,
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 4956.
Second.
it's been moved by Councilor Spickmeyer, second by Councilor Klein to approve the first reading of ordinance number 4956. Is there any discussion? Councilor Spickmeyer, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think there's a lot more to look into it. There's some more information I'd like to see about it, but like they said, we have 2 more readings on it and we can make the necessary adjustments from there.
Councilor Wright, did you have discussion?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Are there any minutes? Not at this time? Not at this time, okay. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Clerk Brocky,
Approving the first reading of ordinance 4956, an ordinance of the city of Lewiston amending the franchise agreement for collection, hauling, and tipping of residential and commercial solid waste, yard waste, and recyclable materials between the city of Lewiston and Sanitary Disposal, Inc., doing business as Sunshine Disposal and Recycling, an Idaho corporation granted pursuant to Lewiston City Ordinance Number 4823 on November 1st, 2021, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest said amendment to the franchise agreement, respectively, providing that the provisions of this ordinance are deemed severable and providing an effective date.
thank you, Clerk Brocky, thank you, councilor, and thank you, Sunshine, for being with us here tonight. And if we have questions, we'll follow up. Our next item, council, is item C, public hearing on the 2026 Transportation Capital Improvement Plan, accepting testimony on the 2026 Transportation Capital Improvement Plan. This is an action item. We have our Public Works Director, Dustin Johnson. We welcome you back to the stage tonight, Director Johnson. After the public hearing and staff presentation, the opening of the hearing, we'll have received public testimony if there is any. Councilors, again, that's your time to ask questions. No additional evidence or testimony may be received once the public hearing is closed. Then I will close the public hearing after that. So I will open the public hearing and turn it over to Public Works Director Dustin Johnson. Director, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. So this is an annual process that we go through. This is what the 2026 Transportation Capital Improvement Plan. This gives the public and council an opportunity to weigh in the priorities that we have for investing large capital projects into our transportation network. I will be upfront. This is probably my second least favorite meeting because it gets convoluted and messy because we're moving around the board and talking about big, large scale projects and trying to weight them. And you're trying to take an engineering process and trying to weight these through and yet trying to make it engaging to the public. And so it can be challenging and it can be kind of confusing. And so I'm going to do my best to keep us all on the kind of the same page tonight. And I have some good news at the end about process. So about the processes, as I said, it's just an opportunity for us to reevaluate annually the priorities that we have in our transportation network as far as large scale investments. And so before we can move forward, we should always look back. Where have we been? And so over the last year, or probably even more, we've talked about Main Street. And so going back probably 2 or 3 fiscal years, we started looking at combining, a water, a wastewater, a stormwater, and a transportation projects. And so that gives you multiple sources of revenue, multiple funding ways of whether it be grants or in this case, going after a bond. There was 2 separate unsuccessful GO bonds, tried, and I think that was all in 2025, so here we are in 2026. Tomorrow, we will be submitting for a federal build grant. That is a federal transportation grant. We already took that in front of you a couple weeks ago for your review, so that grant will go in tomorrow. That covers the transportation component, and anybody who went to any of the open houses saw a large portion was putting back on top of those pipes, all the transportation, sidewalk, pavement, signals, boulevard trees, all of that stuff goes along with that. So if we can get a $20 million head start on that, that makes it more affordable to pay for with utilities. So just trying to find new funding alternatives, ways to get our critical arterial collector infrastructure up to the standards that we would expect it to be. So that's a process that we've been down, and we're going to currently keep going down. 5th Street, so at the top of the grade, this direction, all the way to LCSC where it tees right there, reconstructed that. That project was paid for out of our, actually mostly that was pavement preservation, but we've been getting some good, good news. We've been getting good bids. You'll start seeing some of those in construction year 26. So that was last year. We had reconstruction of 5th Street. 12th Street sidewalk construction, that's in front of, that connects Orchards Elementary to Warner, so across all the way from an elementary school to generally the high school, new high school campus, across the school district administration buildings. And then 17th Street sidewalk, that's right at the corner of Jennifer Middle School going maybe south up the hill. There was a portion of sidewalk that was missing there. And so 12th Street and 17th Street were grants. Sidewalk grants are easier to get than some of these major, like the raise grants or the build grants. So this is the picture looking up the hill. The mall's back over here at Winco, and Jennifer's behind you. So you're looking at this whole block with missing sidewalk is now got sidewalk. And then here you can see 5th Street. This is looking kind of towards us up there, and you can see the new asphalt and the old asphalt. I drive that almost every single day, and I can tell you the ride is significantly better. So that's what we've gotten done in the last just in the last year. The highlights. There's been other grants and projects completed. Where we're going. So I think some of you are on the steering committee for the East Lewiston Network Analysis (ELNA), and so that was a project that was actually funded in the FY25 budget that has been carrying forward. We'll close it out in the 26 budget. That's the evaluation. If we go back probably 2 years now, there was a vacation for the way end of Bryden, and there was some internal discussion, I guess we'll call it, of how viable some of these unconstructed rights-of-way are. And so Bryden, you think a major road, but it clipped out into Lindsay Creek. And so this analysis brought everybody, some of the developers, it's brought in the county, it's brought in the school district, it's brought in the sheriff, it's brought in the port. I mean, it's trying to get everybody on the same page and talk about where these critical pieces are, because what we're finding is growth goes East Lewiston, you're getting clipped out, and so secondary accesses are key as you're going to try and build out more affordable housing or any housing in that direction. Snake River Avenue, if you've noticed, right now we're doing the sewer line underneath the road. As soon as those guys clear out, we'll start construction on the main road. So that's actually Snake River Avenue Phase 2. Phase 1 was the roundabout. Phase 2 goes from the roundabout to 11th, with the turning lanes going up 11th up the hill. So that one will be completed this year. And then approved in we're 26 budget. We're already talking about FY27 budget. Well, I'm getting stuck on these things, but the update to the transportation master plan, the focus on that is going to be the sidewalks. So we've talked, in the CIP, this CIP gets watered down. I'll just say it like that, because you've got sidewalk projects competing with 21st Street and Brighton. And so, not to say, well, I guess I should say, there's more users on Brighton than there is on some of these missing sidewalk units. And so trying to break out, prioritize the areas of sidewalk that are important, while at the same time trying to put emphasis in our investment on these arterials. And so we'll be updating the master plan, updating the CIP process, how it relates to the sidewalks and bike routes and all those other trails. You've seen this, I'm sure, every year. So this kind of outlines the calendar that we've done. This process officially started November 1st in 2025. go out to public comment. We ask for anybody to give us any streets, any projects, any considerations that may not be included in the existing CIP. We take those in, recompile, and then build a new CIP. Then that goes back out for public comment. There's open houses along the way. And then we bring it back to you for tonight's public hearing on the 23rd. We will take comment from the public regarding anything within the city as far as transportation at any time, but at some point we have to say this is the end and this is the beginning. So when this transportation plan was adopted, probably 5 or 6 years ago, it's probably about the same time we adopted this sunshine disposal. Maybe it was just a little bit after that franchise, because I do remember working on this. What they tried to do was to build this into a ranking criteria to try and take a little bit of the personal opinions out of it. So they wanted to rank these by these 5 criteria: mobility, livability, safety, responsible governance, and economic vitality. And so sometimes, and that's why we bring it to the public, and we probably bring it to you, you can look at it, and there's always a street, I can't remember the name of it, it's 20th Street North in the Port. That's always controversial because it meets all the criteria, but the council in the past has said that's not a project that we see as viable compared to like Warner or Thane or Brighton. So that's how we build this. That's where this spreadsheet started, and then we insert the public. And so for this year, we received, I think, 9 comments for projects. I wanted to call out generally, so here's the street and here's kind of the bookends. This is where those are. What was interesting about these, and every year, you never know. I mean, you're opening to the public, so somebody may have a bad day and stub their foot on this particular sidewalk, and you get feedback on that. But what I'm seeing on this is there is a large push. You're seeing the majority of them are pedestrian crossings or sidewalk. It might just be the 25. We got a lot of sidewalk product or questions or concerns, or it may be that the public's starting to utilize some of these facilities more than pavement. I don't know. But what is reassuring that you'll start seeing is a lot of these projects are already identified. So that gives merit to what we do. If they were bringing up projects that we would have never heard of, that means we're probably not focusing on the things that are important. So you start seeing CIP number 13, 23, number 11, number 15. Those are all high-ranking projects. Stuff what we've discussed at length. Thane, 17th Street sidewalk from where that sidewalk network currently ends. We got it to, I think, just past the mall, which is 23rd. But we do get a lot of feedback that people would, because there's an apartment building, and once you get up on top, there's a sidewalk network there. They would like to see that connection, and so that we continue to see that as one of the areas that they would like to see us focus on. So when that was all bundled, we put those in. We got one public comment as regard to the draft the draft CIP, and that was create railroad quiet zones within Lewiston. That's a federal process. I'm not, it could be considered as a CIP. It wouldn't be to a specific area at this point. It would be a consideration. It would probably require, we do have studies as part of recommendations of that. We did not include it in here, but the council wanted to consider it. Railroad quiet zones are sometimes carried by the municipality or the neighborhood that is concerned, or a specific crossing that's triggered by development. This wouldn't be, and I've done a little bit of work with quiet zones in the past, and they're pretty difficult to get past, just because 1, it's a federal process, and 2, you're essentially telling the trains to not, announce their presence at a crossing or honk their horn so they're quiet, but you have to have, basically 100% certainty that no pedestrian or animal or anything else, cars, could get in through there. So it's a hard crossing, tall fences, and a lot of our railroad tracks are in areas of I guess the back end of like Hans and that industrial area, kind of abutting the levee trail. So that may be hard, it'd be expensive to do. So, but that was a comment that we did receive. All right, real quick, wanted to go through, because we talk about there, I think on this list, there's $250 million of projects, and that's just, we're never going to build everything. And so, the joke is there's always more projects than there is money. And so, it's it's important for us to be very strategic with where we put our, not our, just our money, but where we put our focus and time. And so those are the three that I've got listed right there: local funds, grants, and the STBG allocation. So local funds, those are obviously property taxes. Those are the number one. Those are the one that obviously the public is most interested in. They don't want to see those dollars wasted, and we try to make sure that we follow their direction. Franchise fees, that's one where, Avista is probably the biggest contributor. So you pay a percentage to operate within the city right away. And that's the way it operates in Idaho. So the city currently has a 1% franchise fee. I think the two that pay the most are Vista and the Port for their fiber. In order to raise that franchise fee from 1% to 3%, we would have to take a vote of the people. I think it's roughly $400,000 per percent. So currently we're receiving $400,000 in change from Avista. If it went to the full 3%, it would be 1.2 million, give or take, somewhere in that ballpark. So that's an opportunity. The difference between a franchise fee and a property tax is obviously you have exempt, schools and churches that don't pay that. Franchise fees distribute that across all users of gas and power. Grants are great. I showed you those two sidewalks projects. Those are the sidewalk, schools, commercial nodes. That's where we try and connect pedestrians and non-motorized users. The grant, and even sometimes, let's say we get the build grant, you must meet the needs or meet the requirements of that grant. So I could get a sidewalk grant. It's not going to do me a lot of good on Main Street. It is required to go, the grants are usually looking to build safe routes to schools, or there was one, the hot crossing on Snake River Avenue. That was paid for access to federal lands. And so we couldn't use that on Main Street. That was for a very specific use. So grants are there. They're somewhat shrinking, but they are there. And I hope to see them continue for these sidewalk, smaller filler grants. STPG, we call it STP. That's the old allocation. That is about $500,000 a year that we get direct allocation for the federal government. Those funds are programmed and have been programmed for probably 10, 15 years. So Snake River Avenue is mostly paid for by these STBG funds. They've been programmed, that design predates when the tracks were still there. And so to rely solely on these STBG funds, $500,000 is a lot for some projects, but it's not a lot when you're trying to build a $20 million, $30 million project. It takes, decades to build those funds. So Snake River Avenue is now under construction. That's phase 2. 9th Street grade, the picture of it right here, looking down the hill. It looks good. It rides good. But what's underneath that retaining wall is falling apart. And so the substructure is junk. And so it's been programmed in there for quite a while. And that is one that will probably start construction in 28, depending on how those funds are, it's a pot that we redistribute. We get an allocation, but as the funds become available and the project in front of us goes over budget, we get bumped a construction season. The next two on here that have been programmed before any of us got here is Bryden. I guess I shouldn't say that. Sorry, Council. Bryden, phase 1 and phase 2 was that's also on the SCP route. So again, with phase 1 I can't remember what it is. I'll show you the estimate now. Tens of millions of dollars to get these large projects, and you're putting in $500,000 a year. It takes a long time, and that's just not how we, maybe throw a couple projects towards STP, and that's what we've done, but you can't expect STP to solve 21st Street, Main Street, Thane, all of these other projects. It's a consistent funding source, but it's not a golden goose. I'm just going to zip through these real quick, kind of showing these top ones. Thane, Warner, and 10th. In the past, it's been at, last year we adopted it at 48. The criteria now kind of show it at 27. This is the one, I drive it quite frequently. It functions, it just it doesn't give you comfort. And when it gets busy, it breaks very easily. Brighton phase 1, we talked about this. Last year it was 8. phase 2 was number 9. The criteria move it to 1, mostly because all the stuff that was listed. This number is now more correct. This larger number was right away was they overestimated. It was a conservative number. So the good news is this number's gone down, but it's probably going back up just because over time. And then phase 2, I will say this number is not correct because this has not been updated. This is a preliminary planning number. Main Street still sits here. And again, I don't want to get too worked up about which number's more correct. It's a $34 million project, I think, roughly, give or take, once you incorporate all of the pipes and underground stuff. But that's a mix of all of the different funding sources that would come with that project. So that's a high-level summary of the transportation capital improvements that we have tackled in the past, that we've that we are looking at tackling in the future. So what are we doing now? You've seen the public comment. It was in your packet, the full comment. I just gave you the summary in this presentation. Now it is up to you. I mean, well, I guess we'll take comment too, but then we'll move things around as you see fit, and we'll adopt the 2026 transportation CIP. So I will stop talking. We'll hand it over for any public comment. I will close the PowerPoint presentation and I will bring up the spreadsheet. I can organize it by where we left off in 25 and show you the rankings as we left them, or I can bring up the rankings as they were, as they come out by that criteria I spoke about. So I will sit down and let you, or unless you have questions for me now.
Director, if you just step back, I'm going to see if there's anybody from the audience that has comments, testimony tonight. I don't see any, so we're just going to get right back into comments or questions from, thank you, Brandon, for coming.
Thank you.
Council, questions for Director Johnson? This is your time.
I have a question, Director. When we moved the changing of number 1, it was moved number 1 to number 8. I guess that's what it says. That's the Bryden Avenue, or 8 to 1. That's what.
Yep.
So, I guess last year we had Main Street. The council adopted to move it to number 1, correct?
Yep.
That's how it got to number 1?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So council moved Bryden 1 and 2 to 8 and 9. And that just by default moved Main Street from 3 to 1.
Okay.
Councilor Wright.
Thank you. So I noticed Bryden's got a lot of potholes on it and things of that nature. And would that be something that's just outside of this list, and you'd consider that normal maintenance to do that kind of work?
Yes, until the potholes in the bay. I mean, case in point would be 21st Street. 21st Street was a rebuild. We went back, I think, 3 summers ago and put that fiber slurry on it because roads hate water, and so you try and keep it sealed. And so potholes, cracks, you'll see us out crack sealing, chip sealing. Those preserve that pavement, but once that water starts getting in there, you'll start seeing whole sections fall apart, and then it becomes a capital project. And so that's some of my passion is like, the more you invest on the upfront, the cheap, it's, chip seals and crack seals, slurry seals, and fill in those potholes. That is cheap compared to a rebuild. So yeah, it is just pavement preservation until it's not.
I guess to be more direct, I suppose what I'm asking is, will the potholes on Bryden be fixed this year, regardless of this list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I don't know how to say this without, my concern, so Bryden phase 1, so we're going to 7th, sorry. Correct? 7th, 4th to 7th. Okay. I know the stoplight, but what street? So 7th to 4th, we have that generally designed. We have no money for right-of-way, but we're completing the design phase move. There's a plan for that. There's no plan for phase two. So as you drive past 7th and you're going to Thane, there's nothing there. So we're gonna come to a point where we need to have a conversation. I think it's gonna be sooner rather than later, where we need to talk about what's the plan for phase two, which is 7th to Thane. Because yeah, you drive that and that asphalt is not doing well.
Thank you.
That may be a mill and overlay. I'm not sure what that looks like. That's not what we want to do. But that is to the point where we're at now, where we have to look at preserving what we have before it goes to dirt.
Further comments? Hebert?
I was following a couple of the city rigs up riding the other day, Monday, I guess it was, last week. And they're actively patching the potholes up there right now, so any little bit helps.
Yeah, and you know, case in point would be Bryden Canyon, so 4th down to the bridge. We did get that grant, that safety grant, so we got $2 million for a mill and overlay of that road. That was a grant. I would love to take that mill and overlay and, you know, bring it all the way out to Thane, but the safety money was very, you know, that's where the accidents were, and so that's where the money needs to be spent.
Councilor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Director, are we ready to go into some of the list and some of the comments?
I'm ready.
Some individual made a very good comment about Grell,
Yep.
and I guess, and that's me. So my concern with Grail is that we have approved so much building out on that end in East Lewiston in the Orchards and the north end of 18th Street, that the traffic is increased, and I live out there so much. And you look at the road between 15th and 19th, and it's starting to break up from all the trucks, you know, the gravel, the cement, and it's going to go fast. And once it starts going, I don't think we can catch up. And it's not on any list at all.
Yeah.
Grail or Powers.
Yeah. It's Grell is a funny, especially that segment. So we did a chip seal on that. I can't remember. I want to say 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying anything, because any development is great, but we did the chip seal of a final plat came across, or preliminary, they build a subdivision out there. Lloyd has to tear up the road to accommodate the new subdivision. So there goes our brand new chip seal. And then you put all those concrete trucks on top of it. That's what we're trying to prevent, but also trying to predict, you know, that area. I can tell you, Grell is going to see a lot more traffic, especially that segment right there where they're turning right at 18th and heading to town. Yeah, that is one that's probably going to need to be moving up there. And these documents are reactionary. You know, pavement index, we'll go and drive the road, and then next year, like that plat will be, you know, that subdivision will come out there, and then, you know, you put another 500 cars a day and a couple cement trucks out there. Yeah, it's going to degrade real quick.
Well, I guess my biggest concern with it was when I had asked you, or Public Works, about what we had in store for it was, well, nothing, because it's not on the list.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. And what's unfortunate, and I think I've talked about it a little bit in the past, a lot of these roads in the orchards aren't built to, I mean, I don't even say the orchards, 21st Street, when we did a boring, there's just river rock and sand underneath that. So there's a lot of roads that you're starting to see that need to act like a collector, and they're not built to that collector standard. They're built to a farm road, put some asphalt on top of it, and when that section's built up enough where it stops sinking, we're good. And so now, 50 years later, you're starting to see those roads. I mean, no matter how much we keep the water out of it, it's just, it doesn't have the base to support the traffic that it's seeing now. So I guess, would you like me to bring up the 2025, or do you want to keep it? Because these are the rankings by the, where are these rankings?
But we're going to rearrange or amend, if at all, after the hearing, so.
Okay.
Mayor.
Council, if you have any more questions for the director, Councilor Forsman?
I don't know if it's just me not seeing it, but do we have on here 10th Street and Thane where Arby's is, that horrible intersection right there?
It's low.
I don't know if
it's in the
labeled,
teens.
maybe something different. Okay, I think Stuart.
It's on there, but it's not as high as some people may think it should be.
And it's labeled specifically to fix that intersection, or is it maybe under a different like description?
It should be.
I see bike routes stuff, but I don't see like to fix that. Look like 4 times. I don't know why I can't find it.
Yeah, here it is. It is. Last year it was bumped up to, oh no, last year it was bumped down to 48. The criteria listed at 27.
Okay, thank you.
Councilors, if there's no more questions for the director, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 7:31. Thank you, Director. Council, next we move to item D, Resolution 2026-05, considering adopting the City of Lewiston 2026 Transportation Capital Improvement Plan. Again, this is an action item. Public Works Director Dustin Johnson is with us here tonight. Councilor, you basically have a couple of options. You can adopt as amended tonight, so if you want to go through that list, or if you want to work on moving things around on that list, you could also do that tonight and then come back at another meeting to give it your final review and adopt it at that time. So with that, I will throw it up to the council. Councilor Spicklemeyer?
So can you repeat that to me?
So you have two options tonight. We can work through this tonight live like we're doing and propose some amendments and vote on each of those amendments. And then after that, vote on the plan itself. Or if you want to, rearrange it, talk about some changes to it, you can come back another night and consider it at that point. So remember, identifying it as an action item doesn't mean that we have to take action on it tonight. So whatever you're prepared for. If you're prepared to vote on this, we can certainly do that and then entertain amendments individually as they come along.
So it would be a motion to table the,
We just won't take action on it tonight.
What may be easiest if you just provide me feedback on specific projects you'd like to see moved up, and then I can do my best to draft something more coherent than what we've got, have it in a packet, and then you guys can fine tune it from there.
Councilor, do you have a preference?
I would like to extend it and, keep working on it at a different date unless everyone else is fine with what it is. I just really only had one addition, and that was putting that grail on there somewhere. So that's all I had.
Councilors?
I had a couple wanting to move things around, so I wouldn't mind extending it. Giving more time to discuss and move things around.
Director, that seems to be the will of the council tonight. So I guess what I would ask you, council, then is to get those changes put together and be prepared to discuss those so that we can get this CIP approved and move forward on that. So, ready. Thank you, Director.
Excuse me, Mayor. Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. is there a specific date we want to bring this back to discuss, or a deadline for the council members to submit their proposed revisions to Director Johnson?
That's a good question. Thank you, Jennifer. Council, our next meeting is a work session on March 2nd. Our next regular meeting is Monday, March 9th. So if you have some idea when you might want to do that, I'll just get it scheduled.
The 9th.
The 9th?
Is the next work session pretty action-packed?
I think
or-
it is. It's
Yeah.
pretty full.
Okay, maybe moving it then,
So Monday, March 9th? And we'll get
whatever's
her-
the least.
We'll get her done?
Yeah,
Okay.
because these takes a while, so.
Tanya, did you get that? We'll put it on the March 9th meeting, and we'll get her done that night. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Jennifer. Council, next up is the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. We will accept the action on these issues unless the council so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered on the active agenda under items moved from the consent agenda.
Mayor,
Councilor Forsman?
I'd like to remove vouchers payable from the consent agenda.
Okay.
What was that, payables?
Well, entertain.
Vouchers payable.
I'd entertain. With the vouchers payable removed.
Who moved?
Nothing else, okay? It's been moved by Council President Kleber, second by Councilor Spickelmeyer to approve the consent agenda, minus the vouchers payable. Favor, please second, well, Clerk Rocky, you're going to help me with that one.
Council President Kleber,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
Counselor Forsman,
Aye.
Counselor Klein. Aye. Counselor Spickelmeyer.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you. Rock, oops, that's my name tag. Next, we're going to go to Roman numeral 7, active agenda, item A, the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Considering approving the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, this is an action item. We have our City Treasurer, Finance Director with us here, Amy Gordon. Amy, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'd like to start by again thanking council for your attendance at our work session earlier today, where you received an in-depth review of the city's annual financial report. As I mentioned earlier today, it's about a 5-month process where we start at the end of September, planning out what our audit timeline will be, what our processes will be. And then we really dive in deep in the later part of October and November to get everything ready for our auditors, who then come in and audit those financial transactions. I want to take this opportunity to show my appreciation for my staff. They work really hard during this time of year to be able to go through and reconcile all the city accounts on top of their other duties. I have members of my staff that will pick up the slack when we need to focus on the audit and putting together the annual comprehensive financial report books that you guys received earlier today. I especially want to thank my accounting supervisor, Claire Blewett, who does a lot of the heavy lifting with this project. I'd like to thank city departments, our department directors and their staff for being able to provide us information as needed. Thanks to our audit committee who participate in the process and provide that bridge between us and the community. And then also I'd like to thank our auditors at President Gage for their professionalism and being courteous and kind throughout the process and just being a pleasure to work with. And I would now like to introduce you to President Gage's associate partner, Dawn Aliverti, who manages our audit each year, and her team of staff.
Welcome, Don. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Dawn Aliverti, an associate partner with President Gage, and I am the partner in charge of the City of Lewiston's audit engagement. I'm here tonight to formally present the council, the audited financial statements and reports of the fiscal year ending September 30, 2025. We have reviewed the audit processes and results with the audit committee. to form that bridge, as Amy indicated, to establish of transparency. The annual comprehensive financial report is provided to you in final form prior to this meeting during our work session, and thank you for attending and having me there tonight. President Gage has performed the city's audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. Under those standards, it is the objective of the audit to obtain reasonable, not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Basically, the financial statements and information reported within the annual comprehensive financial report is the responsibility of management and this council. President Gage is responsible for issuing an opinion on the information provided after the audit is complete. The audit opinions that were presented are in your packet. We issued an opinion indicating the city's financial statements with regards to governmental activities, business type activities, the component unit, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining funds are fairly presented in all material respects. And this is an unmodified or a clean opinion. Another opinion, during our audit, we considered the city's internal control procedures over financial reporting and determined that those procedures there are procedures in place to account for the city's funds, and we issued a clean opinion on that as well. The last of the opinions, we audited the city's compliance with state and federal regulations along with internal controls over those compliance requirements with regards to federal funded major programs. We issued an unmodified opinion on that report as clean opinion. I as well want to thank the city finance staff, Amy and Claire, and all the folks in their department. They do work hard to get us the information in a timely fashion, in an organized fashion. Also, the departments that we inquire on or visit during our audit have been very helpful and during that process. So if there are no questions, we formally request the council's authorization to release the audited financial statement as presented. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Dawn. Councilors, questions? Councilor Forsman?
Motion to approve the 2025 annual comprehensive financial report.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Forsman, second by Councilor Speckelmeyer to approve the 2025 annual comprehensive financial report. Clerk Rocky?
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Council, thank you, Dawn, for being with us here tonight. Council, next up, we have item B, Resolution 2026-07, considering declaring various items of the city of Lewiston property to be surplus and providing for the public auction of said surplus. This is an action item where City Treasurer, Finance Director Amy Gordon is here if you need to ask any questions. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor.
Councilor Forsman?
Motion to approve resolution 2026-07.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Forsman, second by Councilor Wright to approve Resolution 2026-07.
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Carries. Thank you, Council. Item C, collective bargaining agreement request, considering a request from the Fraternal Order of Police Lewiston, Lewis Clark Loss number 10 FOP to begin negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. This is an action item. We have our HR Director, Nikki Province, with us here tonight. Nikki, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Nikki Province, HR Director for the city. As is normal process, the union has reached out to us to begin negotiations. Their current collective bargaining agreement is set to end September 30th. And we're really, like we've done in past years, coming to council to be given direction on if you would like us to, staff in particular, to enter into negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement that would be effective 10/1 with our Fraternal Order of Police.
Thank you, Director. Clerk or Council, questions for Director Province?
Mayor.
Counselor Forsman,
Motion to begin negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police Lewis Clark Lodge number 10.
Second.
by Counselor Forsman, second by Council President Kleber to begin negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police Lewis Clark Lodge number 10. Clerk Brocky.
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
Counselor Forsman,
Aye.
Counselor Klein,
Nay.
Counselor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Clerk Rocky and Chief Cusick. We look forward to working with the FOP and contract in place. Thank you. Councilors, next up, we have item D, ordinances number 1, second, and third readings. Item A, ordinance 4959 concerning amending Lewiston City Code section 37-3 relating to the definition of parking lot, amending Lewiston City Code sections 37-146, 37-149, 37-151, and 37-153 relating to parking lots, and repealing and reserving Lewiston City Code section 37-147. This is an action item. Council, we've been through this a couple of times. If you have any questions for our Assistant City Planner, Katie Hollingshead, she's here with us tonight. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor,
Councilor Speckelmeyer,
motion to waive the third reading of full of ordinance number 4959 and approve the reading of ordinance number 4959 by title only.
Second.
been moved by Councilor Speckelmeyer, seconded by Councilor President Kleber to waive the third reading in full of ordinance number 4959 and approve the reading of ordinance number 4959 by title only. Are there any amendments tonight? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those against,
Aye, sorry. Not against, for.
carries. Clerk Rocky.
Approving the second and third readings of ordinance 4959, an ordinance of the City of Lewiston amending Lewiston City Code Section 37-3 relating to the definition of parking lot, amending Lewiston City Code Sections 37-146, 37-149, 37-151, and 37-153 relating to parking lots, repealing and reserving Lewiston City Code Section 37-147 and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Clerk Rocky. Council, next we move to number 2, adoption and approval of ordinance summaries. Item A, ordinance 4959. This is an action item.
Mayor,
Councilor Speckelmeyer,
motion to adopt ordinance number 4959 and approve the related ordinance summary.
Second.
by Councilor Speckelmeyer, seconded by Councilor Forsman to adopt ordinance number 4959 and approve the related ordinance summary. Clerk Rocky.
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
Counselor Forsman,
Aye.
Counselor Klein,
Aye.
Counselor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Carries. Thank you, Council. Katie, thank you for your work on that. Thank you, Clerk Rocky. Next, we move to Roman numeral 8, items moved from the consent agenda. Councilor Forsman.
One was on page 8 of 13. I don't know if that's CK number 122021. I think economic development. So the L Ranch Hotel in the amount of $1,150. Just curious what, I'm not sure what that is.
I'm not seeing El Ranch Hotel on the list, am I?
You know what it is, so.
Okay. Shannon Grow, Community Development Director. I believe that one would be, if it's under the Economic Development Funds, that one would be from our CDBG program.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, those types of vouchers are.
Or for that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Director Grove.
One. Sorry, outside. That one.
And then the other one was just Adobe licensing. I know that sounds kind of silly, but what exactly do we use the Adobe for?
We have several departments that will edit PDF documents, and so to do that, they need a PDF editor. Adobe is one of them that they use.
Oh, okay.
I use Foxit. So, to be able to edit PDFs and have that ability, you would need a software capable of handling that. And that would be the annual subscription for it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Counselor Forsman, to comment on Adobe, as a department that switched from Foxit, which is a cheaper alternative to Adobe, at least for legal purposes, the functionality of Foxit just hasn't been satisfactory. And so we did eventually choose to go with a more expensive option because the ability to make the changes and to use the product as at least my department needs is worth the extra price. Previously to working with the city, I had a private subscription, and so I was very familiar with it, and I've been using it for the last 4 years with the city, and it just has not really provided the ease of edits, the ease of providing comments and working with outside legal counsel, and even just the tools available to it just isn't quite there. So we, in my department, we justified the increased cost because of those needs. So we recently changed from Foxit to Adobe, knowing that it was more expensive, just because the functionality is more in line with what we actually need from it than Foxit.
Okay, thank you. And I think my last one, Shannon Grow, I think pretty much answered that one because it's under the economic development for Lewis Clark Crop Management. So that's under the same CBG. So I think that answered that question for me. That is all my questions. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to approve vouchers payable.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Council President Kleberg, seconded by Councilor Wright to approve vouchers payable. Clerk Rocky?
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Klein. Aye. Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Council. We move to Roman numeral 9, unfinished and new business. Item A, City Councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the City Council or an item that may come for the City Council in the foreseeable future. Shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Councilors?
Mayor.
Councilor Forsman?
First, I'd like to mention the podcast. If you want to listen to the city's podcast, tuning in to stay informed, I highly suggest. When I first got on council, I asked if we had one or if we were looking to get one, and the mayor informed me that they were in the works. So I want to extend a kudos, to our public information officer, Carol Maurer. She puts in a lot of work to create an easy, accessible source of information so we can all stay informed. So I think that was a good move in the right direction for the city. Another kudos I would like to extend is to Public Works Committee. They gave me a thank you card for serving on the board, and I think that was a nice touch that other boards might be able to implement to, just thanking people for putting in their community service they put in. So take notes because I thought that was a very nice touch. All my comments.
Further council comments? No? Item B, City Boards and Commissions, liaison updates. Councilor Spiegelmeier?
Thank you, Mayor. We had a meeting last week with the Parks and Rec Commission. One of the big issues we talked about was there was concerns about the condition of the engine, I guess you'll call it, the locomotive park. I guess it's really getting rusted and deteriorated, and it's kind of a safety issue. So one of the commission members is going to be added to one of our agendas, going to come and do a presentation on it and give us a recommendation on what to do with that.
Councilor Forsman?
I partook in the interview for the URA. They were looking to fill a vacant spot. That's, I think, been open for at least a year or two. And so it was a good interview, and I have high hopes for the interviewee that they would make a good fit. So we'll see when that comes to council what everybody else thinks.
Okay, mayor comments, item C. Council, I want to let you know of another opportunity. And we have a real need here. And that is the Comprehensive Plan Work Plan Committee. It is an ad hoc committee that meets when necessary and or needed. That was created by you, the city council, pursuant to Lewiston City Code Section 2-41B. The purpose of the committee, currently consisting of 3 planning and zoning members, the mayor, 2 city council members, and we need 1, and non-voting support staff. This committee recommends initiatives to be pursued to implement goals, objectives, and actions of Envision Lewiston 2044, which is our comp plan, our new comp plan. And so when we start talking about parking standards and forestry standards and stuff like that, this is where it happens, councilors. This is your opportunity to be involved, to turn that plan into action. And we need someone. I serve on that, and our city planner, Jill Plascon, has been asking for a city council member. And if you can do that, that would be very much appreciated. And again, it's just once every 3 months or so for an hour at noon. Katie Hollings had left. I was going to have her comment if you had any questions, but it's really Council President Kleberg. Sign you up.
Tell me when.
We'd love to have you there. Clerk Brockett,
Okay.
can you document that for me?
Get it right. Okay, go back.
Counselors, I'm going to call you for witnesses, and we'll let you know.
Okay,
Appreciate that, Council President Kleberg. We can get on with our work there. And I too just want to echo Director Gordon's comments. Her staff worked very hard, Amy worked very hard to bring the ACFR to completion, and so we're very happy about that and the results equally. Happy to have a guest with us tonight. Thank you for attending, for showing an interest in city government. It can be long sometimes, it can be short sometimes, but the topics are varied, and I find them very interesting. That's why I'm here, that's why I'm serving, and I know I appreciate the service of our legal office too. They're very dedicated, so thank you for being here. And good luck in your studies too. I know you have a lot of work ahead of you. Counselors, item D, agenda topics. None? Okay, we'll move to adjournment.
To adjourn.
second.
It's been moved by Counselor Forsman, second by Council President Kleber to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? We are adjourned. Thank you, council.